Slip space rapture detected.
Going dark.
I didn't sign up for this.
Do not fear. I shall be your salvation.
Shields up, weapons operational. Wait, we're not equipped with shields. Well then, buckle up.
Welcome to Sins of the Podcast. This is a show created by the Sins of the Prophets dev team to discuss the mod and general Halo news. This is episode number 2. If you're not familiar with episode number 1, check our YouTube channel for the past recording, but it's been a while. Today we have myself, we have Idio, our lead playtest, we have
Hello.
Cole.
Hi.
He is our jack of all trades, particle effects artist, general do-gooder. We have Lavo. He is our coding and balance lead. And we have Malcontent 1692, our art director.
The one and the same.
There we go. Okay, so we have quite a bit to discuss this episode. We're going to be starting it off with a little bit of Q&A, and then we're going to jump into some topics that we think you guys will be pretty interested in. We've got talk about Road to 1.0. That's heading to version 1.0 of Sins of the Prophets, since we're still in alpha officially with release 0.88. We're going to be talking about the fighter supply rework that we've done and how it functions for those of you that might be interested in it. We're going to talk about the Flood a little bit. We're also going to be talking about the Douche Mac, which is also the Viri class super orbital defense platform, which is going to be enhancing and changing up UNSC defensive strategy just a little bit. We're going to be talking about stuff that we need to finish getting done before we're officially at 1.0, to become asset complete. We're going to be talking about, potentially, we'll let Malcontent talk a little bit about the upcoming update to the Punic class supercarrier for the UNSC. We're going to be discussing our beautiful baby, the Artemis 2.0.
Baby.
We will hypothetically talk about Forerunners. And we will also be discussing the faction split that we have planned in the future after version 1.0 is released. We also have a few other nifty art assets that we've shown in the past that will be releasing with the next version of the mod, which should be 0.9, the official beta. We may also discuss glassing if we have time and feel like we need to. So let's go ahead and start this off with the Q&A. I'm going to read a question, and then I will let the people on the floor have at it, okay? Well, the first one is actually something I need to address. So Montana from the Discord channel asks, are you going to release your 3D assets ever? And somebody named Chris on the Facebook page also asked a similar question. And the reason that people ask this kind of question is because historically in the past, we talked about releasing the assets out to the Halo community. And a facsimile of that is still in the pipeline. Things that we have updated recently, we plan to take the older versions and put them out to the public, but we don't have a set time or date for that. We don't want to take our very high detailed recent assets like those worked on by Malcontent and put them out there for public use to end up anywhere and everywhere while Malcontent is still trying to find a job with those in his portfolio, since, really easily he needs to be able to say, this is mine and I made it.
Indeed.
Right.
And it's a little hard when, everyone and their grandmother has, the new Artemis model. So.
Right. Yeah, it's a big hassle to try to prove that you're not just one of the other people that happen to have it. And we're also worried about people, like when we release stuff, we're obviously going to have a caveat that says, do not use this to make a competing product, because we don't want somebody to take stuff we've made and make another SOS or Stellaris mod, because that's our purview. That's what we've done. These are our assets. It would be pretty screwed up to do that. And we don't really want to let the cat out of the bag until we're really sure that it's not going to be too big of a deal for us, because odds are people are not going to listen, especially people who don't speak English and manage to download the files without understanding our caveat. European modding community unfortunately has some pretty unfortunate issues. Unfortunately, I don't know if I said that enough.
Bit redundant.
Not right for accentuation. They have issues not respecting IP laws or the wishes of content creators, even in the modding community. There's that saying, there's no honor among thieves. And unfortunately, that is very pronounced in communities that don't necessarily speak English. We've ran into it quite a bit over the 8 years that I've been working on this project. So, Pentium 2, again, from the Discord channel. If you're not on the Discord channel, you should absolutely join. Maybe someone will be kind enough to post it in the Twitch chat. There we go. Thank you, Cole. So, Pentium 2 asks, will we ever see a Forerunner faction, and if so, when? Lavo.
Well, Forerunner faction. Can I go with a yes and no?
Yes.
I mean, the one thing is, look, a fully fledged, okay, the Forerunners are back. They're the big old empire or whoever they are. That's simply not happening. That's not going to be a thing. But what we might do. Well, yeah, let's put fortress classes in those super huge vessels.
50-kilometer long ships. And then the Mantle's approach is what, 340 kilometers tall or something like that. Like they're obscenely large, and they don't work within Sins of a Solar Empire, and the scale is not that dissimilar from Stellaris, so it wouldn't really work for either one. We have plans to do smaller scale stuff, but 100,000 years ago, Forerunner Empire at its height of power, you're not going to see it. It's just not reasonable or sane to expect.
Yeah, like there's a chance that we might want to consider like I guess you could say mostly Sentinel based faction. They might not necessarily be the best faction per se, but you would be able to, there would be perhaps a small amount of living Forerunners in there, but it would mostly be the Sentinels. But a lot of that is really mostly theoretical at this point. And of course, there's also the second question of whether it'll be part of the era splitting that will be talked about later, or if it would be put in the wartime. But the wartime one would probably be pure Sentinel, keeping in line with the original Halo timeline. But this is like kind of getting into big complexities here.
Right. Yeah, we would really like for players to get to shoot at Dragoons, which is the Forerunner dreadnought you see in Halo Wars 1.
Yeah.
We would also really like for players to have the opportunity to use them. The thing is, they're really friggin' big. They're like 14 kilometers tall. I mean, they're a long ship. They're not a wide ship. But if you're wanting to just throw 100 Forerunner ships at 150 UNSC ships, that's probably not something you're going to get, because the Forerunner faction is going to be powerful and few. I mean, there's going to be tons of Sentinels, but like ships that are piloted are going to be few and far between, and it's just not going to be that big release that people want. We just don't have. Go on.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. Sorry for the pinging. They're trying to say,
good.
Hey, look, I have something to say. There's also another big consideration here, and this is something that people also don't realize with regards to the scale and power of these vessels. Even if, say, the size of them was completely irrelevant and not an issue, the other big issue that must be considered is that the mod itself is very alpha damage focused. The UNSC, for example, is micro heavy because it's pure alpha damage in terms of what it relies on. And the Covenant also relies a lot on alpha damage, not as much. But then where do the Forerunners come in? If they're somebody who requires a really, a small amount of really big ships, right? What happens then? Is it that, well, what happens? Can they tank like the initial alpha strike? Pardon? The initial alpha strike of the UNSC, and then they proceed to wipe out most of the UNSC fleet? Or are they insta-wiped by UNSC alpha strike? What happens there? It's like, well, either you have one or two you might have one or two extremes. And then, of course, you have the Covenant, where you might see more interesting matchup, but in that case, the Forerunner ships might just literally be Covenant 2.0 in a sense.
Right. And we want to make a unique and distinct faction. So we don't want to make a Covenant 2.0. We want to figure out a way to do it that it's rewarding for everybody.
Something that is, generally unique not only in visual style but also gameplay. Something that you don't see with the UNSC, something you don't see with the Covenant.
Thesk in the Twitch chat was saying my audio was pretty low. Does it sound any better now, Thesk? Oh, good. Not too loud?
Cool.
Okay. Boy, they're taking their time. Well, yeah, there's a bit of a delay anyway. Okay, we'll cut that out of the recorded podcast. So, next question is from Z Badar. He's asking, Playable Flood when?
No.
So here's the thing. The most straightforward answer you could possibly get from us is, you will never have Playable Flood as long as I'm in control of the mod for Sins of Solar Empire. It just doesn't work. It wouldn't be enjoyable. It wouldn't be fun for the other people to fight against, and you wouldn't have fun either.
Honestly, I think all of us can agree on that. That just wouldn't be fun.
The kind of attention to detail and the kind of attention to lore that you expect from us, we would also apply to the Flood. And so you would end up in a scenario where you have to start out small and you have to capture other people's ships. And wouldn't be able to do anything to them. You wouldn't be able to upgrade them. You wouldn't be able to improve them. Just with the way Sins of the Solar Empire works, it wouldn't be fun. Now, hypothetically, we are talking a little bit later in the podcast about updates to the Flood, and we are going to be making more Flood ships. Hypothetically, because of how few ships you need for Stellaris, we could hypothetically have a playable faction for Flood there. Long term.
Of course, yeah.
Down the road.
They would mostly be a ship set with, of course, a population set, but they wouldn't have Flood-like things. They wouldn't be event things, and also more importantly, for other ship packs, namely things like NSC and all those, they probably wouldn't have like a collection of unique ship classes like we currently have for those, because there aren't enough assets for that.
Right.
And in fact,
be vanilla.
Yeah. And for their structures, there's a good chance you might see their structures are like, say, floodified versions of existing UNSC and Covenant ones.
Yep.
Again, for that reason, there's no Flood starbase. There's no Flood like basic orbital mine.
And
none of that exists.
The thing is, taking time to do that would take time away from other things that you would enjoy more, frankly. Like, we have to, long term, we have plans for Swords of St. Helios, Banished, other factions of that nature. Us spending time working on the Flood and kind of getting it sort of half right, but kind of not, because They would be relatively low poly for the organic shapes that they would need to be. It wouldn't be a good use of time for us, because we're a small team. We have limited manpower. Just, you wouldn't get out of it what in your mind, your hype, think you would. So yeah, on to the next thing. Pindium's asking, when can we expect the next update? We don't have an ETA on that. Anywhere from a few months to longer. We're hard at work. We're going to be talking about that later in the show, but we don't have any set time frame at this time. We're still basically in the planning stages of what's going on for bigger pieces that we're going to be talking about.
A lot of the bigger pieces just got their initial commits out for testing, so that's going to take a lot of polishing, then polishing the polish, then polishing that polish.
Yeah,
you
guys don't realize how much polish goes into Sins of the Prophets before we ship it out. I mean, I know, we're an amateur operation. Bad, unfortunate things do get out with releases, but just imagine if we didn't have a full-time playtest team standing by to check our commits. It would be even worse.
And talking about the playtesters, I mean, we have about 30 playtesters right now, and before we send out a release, there's a fair amount of active playtesting that they do that is kind of a filter for changes to a public release. So sometimes something that we plan doesn't end up in a final release, and we're in that kind of period right now where we're deciding what's going in, what needs refining, and everything's currently being tested. Some of the stuff, like Cole said, is in its initial push into the build. So there's a lot of things that playtesters are very actively playtesting. There's a lot of things that are going through the rigmarole of refinement.
Okay. So Sierra asks, how big will the next update be? I can't believe this slipped into the list. Sierra is literally asking for the file size. We don't know the file size yet, buddy.
I mean,
you need to buy a real hard drive.
I mean, can I go with, it's not gonna be, it probably won't be significantly different than the existing file size, and if anything, it might be a bit larger. It doesn't vary much.
Somewhere within the 100 megabytes of the current size, most likely, because of textures that we'll be adding. I mean, that's the big addition.
Stuff is all going to be code.
It won't be too much bigger than the current. I can't think of anything we can do to jump it up that much.
Right.
So.
And Kenneth Peters from 343 asks, Kigyar Pirate Faction or we riot? We
I agree, Dan. Good question.
With a relatively new staff member named Inkar, and he is concepting Kigyar pirate ships, not for a faction, but for militia. We want to make your militia interactions more diversified and more interesting, and so we're working on ways to do that within our limited manpower, but we are currently concepting Kigyar specific pirate ships.
Can I go with the tease of, well, I wonder if there happen to be Kigyar ships that we should put in that have not yet been seen.
And also hypothetically Kigyar ships that can find in places that you may not know. If you peruse through Halo Mythos, you might find one. I'm just going to put that out there. Discord user Ungoy asks, will there be more cool VOs like the ones with the grunts? Yes. We've got plans for a Kigyar VO for one of the ships. It's not set in stone yet. We're still working on the lines, and we'll have to find somebody that does a good job with the voice acting. Somebody on the team might give it a try themselves. So
we're also looking at voice actors all the time.
What'd you say, Idio? Sorry.
We're always looking for good voice actors.
We are looking for good voice actors.
Also recently just got a submission for a certain voiceover for a certain Covenant ship that you may want to mention.
Yes, that is correct. So we're going to be updating the CCS voice relatively soon. We reached out to Thesk Duram from the Sangheili community. He's done some voice work for Cannon Fodder. Not Cannon Fodder, Covenant Cannon. And he does a really good job. And I've got him, he's going to re-attempt his lines and do a little bit of pitch modulation. Try to get them a little bit closer to, kind of what we hear in like Halo 2. So we're really excited to get that back from him. And as soon as we get that, we'll be updating the CCS and we'll be posting a link to hear that. It'll be up on the ModDB and that kind of stuff. So we're really looking forward to showing that off.
Yeah, he does a fantastic Sangheili voice. So
yep. Yeah, when we start
we're really stoked over it. It sounds
Oh, yeah.
exceptional.
It's great. When we start doing Swords of Sanghelios, he's probably going to be more than one ship. I mean, realistically, he's really good.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've got late night gaming on tap for an Atriox voice for when we do the Banished. He's already signed up for it. He does a great job. His voice attempts are out there. I think he's done one for Covenant Cannon, so you can find it out there if you're interested. So Tyler asks about the faction split. We'll discuss that later in the show. Okay, so here's a good one to kind of segue into topics. Sethius asks about what kind of changes we're going to be implementing based off of Warfleet, and he wants to know, as overall long-time Halo fans, how do we feel about Warfleet? Do we feel like it did justice for the Halo universe, or did we find it lackluster or anything like that? So I think this is a good segue into the topics. So, guys, go ahead. Start talking about how cool Warfleet is.
It's awesome.
Warfleet is great. I sleep with it every night.
It looks really, really nice.
I have it
There's a
just
lot of
like
good
that.
stuff in it.
Scream really loud.
I mean,
they'll spare you that.
I mean, honestly, I do miss. Kenneth Peters has mentioned this before, especially during the Halo Warfleet stream that they did recently. There's like a lot of like just pure like boatloads of lore that I unfortunately had to cut. I would have loved for that to have been in.
Yeah,
You guys should go
But
watch that stream.
it's still
by
a
the
very
way.
nice
if
bit.
you're watching or listening to this podcast after the fact, not live, you should pause it right now. Go over to mixer.com/Halo, go into their past broadcasts and listen to the one about Warfleet. It is great. It's Jeff Easterling and Kenneth Peters talking about Warfleet. They unfortunately, they're great guys. They're both great guys. We got to meet them during PAX this year and last year. But Warfleet was planned to be bigger, but due to time constraints and constraints related to the art pipeline, they had to reduce the book in scope and size. And so they had thousands of words per ship that they had to cut. We're prodding him to try to make a technical manual to push that stuff out so that at least it's out in the community. We'll see if 343 goes for that or not. But
And if they just put it on the market, like even make it a digital release, just take all the text, copy, paste it.
Oh yeah,
we will buy it.
When we heard
Please.
that so much was cut out of the book, the whole team was like, "No!"
The whole Mixer chat was just like, "Oh, you got to tell us." So I'm not surprised. So yeah, I guess I'll go with my overall feeling on Warfleet. Warfleet is great, and I would recommend that anybody that likes Halo ship stuff, if you're listening to this right now, you are the target audience for the book. Now,
Yes.
the book does not have a scale chart. It doesn't have every ship in the fleet. It's got a selection of 6 or 8 ships from each faction, UNSC, Covenant, and then it's got a few Forerunner things at the end of the book. And they're all in great detail. It's lots of good information. But obviously, being lore fanatics like you must be if you're playing Sins of the Prophets, it's not going to be a full belly, but it will be very tasty. And it will make you want more. And hopefully, the appeal of this, because it was in Amazon's top-selling art books for a long time. It might still be there. I haven't checked. But hopefully the appeal of it is wide enough that 343 makes Warfleet 2 or some kind of edition.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, if you're interested in that stuff, like go buy that book and support that because we need more of that. Like
need
Halo Warfleet 2, like
a
you
lot
said,
more.
we would love.
We need
Yeah.
Yes,
like several more volumes. Give me like 4 or 5 of those books.
Yes.
I'll take them.
yes.
We need them. And you need to buy them. If you play Sins of the Prophets, you should buy them. They're right up your
Consider-
alley.
That is the closest way to support us directly. If you like
That's
what we
true.
do, go buy the book and
If you
download the
like
mod.
what we
but
do and you want us to have more content to throw in, 343 has to get that message. They have to be told more ship stuff. Put more focus on the ships. Have more ships individually in the games, all that stuff. And the best way to do that is to buy their shit, obviously. Yeah, that's the easiest way.
War fleet battles, all that stuff.
Well,
Yes.
Fleet Battles is gone now. Rest in peace.
Now I'm
Unfortunately.
sad.
And they don't have any current plans to make any kind of alternative product with anybody else. Hopefully other companies are reaching out to them and trying to get them to lease them a license for it, but we'll see. Unfortunately, that isn't anything I have information about. I get little tidbits here and there, but nothing about any kind of Fleet Battles-esque type game.
Unfortunate.
The Twitch chat is pressing F for respects. We appreciate your respects.
We
mourn
respect your
alongside.
solidarity.
Mhm.
Okay, so Road to 1.0 as a topic is really generic and amorphous. So we'll I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to discuss like the road to 1.0, but many of the things that we're going to be discussing are the road to 1.0. The fighter supply change, flood updates to UNSC defenses, the final units that we need to throw in. I guess the best way to talk about the road to 1.0 is to let you know ahead of time that 1.0 is not the finished SOTP product. It is effectively the definitive edition for what we originally tried to do. But things have grown in scope since then, and we have grander plans to eclipse 1.0. 1.0 is just getting something that is feature complete out. It's like if you go play Star Trek Armada 3 right now, it's a complete product, but they're working on addendums, I guess, or alternate versions of the mod for eras and things like that. And they beat us to publishing those kind of things, but not to planning them. So yeah, do you want to talk about this at all, Lavo?
I mean, I could.
I mean, we've
I
got
don't mind.
the meat. We've got the meat to get into below the road to 1.0 topic, so we don't necessarily have to go into great depth here.
I actually want to see if I can load up the good old spreadsheet here,
Okay.
or rather the document, before I say, oh yeah, we have plans to do all these other things. Well, actually, one of the things, and I guess I'll use this as a bit of a segue. I'll use road. Actually, no, I know what I'll do. What we'll do for road to 1.0. We'll start talking about things, subjects, which are actually in our to-do list that also happen to be on the road to 1.0.
Perfect.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, and I guess one thing I'll start with this is the good old fighter supply system.
Oh boy.
Now, some of you probably are wondering, well, what is this, and why does this sound like it's almost something like I might have seen in another mod or something or other? Well, honestly, we aren't the first people to have done it. I don't know even if how we've done it is necessarily original either, but we've done it anyway. What the gist of this fighter supply system is that now some of you who are very keen reading through change logs, paying attention to unit abilities, may have noticed that said abilities no longer cost any antimatter to use. This is not an accident in any way. This is, in fact, very intentional. To explain more specifically what it is meant to do and what it kind of does is that now your fighters will cost supply. Now, or rather antimatter, which we've renamed to supply to be clearer and more precise. What it is that every single craft for every squadron will have approximately 4 antimatter. And to give you more exact numbers, every bomber squadron costs 1 antimatter, and every fighter squadron costs 0.75 antimatter. So this in turn means if you say taking an Eon from the current public build as an example, it starts with 4 squadrons, and as a result, it has 16 supply, which means that it could have 4 flights of bombers if you went with all bombers in a battle and whatnot. Now, what this is meant to do is you can't just, go around endlessly hitting people with your strikecraft all the time, using them as expendable first waves all the time. You have to, from time to time, either A, bring your ships to a friendly, port of call to get resupplied, which is dealt with by repair stations and anchors for the UNSC. Or you also have to make use of accompanying batteries. Now, batteries, in short, are craft frigates, which hold antimatter, can give it to other ships, but do not natively regenerate antimatter. Because, oh yes, I forgot to mention this, no ship can restore their own antimatter natively. They have to get it from some sort of source. And these batteries are that source, and specifically for the UNSC, there was only one real option here, and that, of course, was the good old cradle.
That's correct. The UNSC Cradle will be the quote-unquote supply battery for the UNSC fleet. And just to make it really clear, you have antimatter on your ship as set number. Antimatter is used to replenish strikecraft in this updated change to the system. We're renaming antimatter to supply. So when we talk about supply in the future or fighter supply, that's what we mean. This is primarily to reduce fighter spam. We want you to eventually run out of it because it breaks things.
Or more likely, just have less.
Yes, overall less. And people who are not adept at keeping their fighter supply replenished are going to find their games are less laggy, because one of the heavy loads on the CPU is the game trying to calculate the movement and position of all of those strike craft towards the end of the game. So if you're pushing into enemy territory and you don't have a good convoy of quote-unquote batteries moving with your fleet, you're going to run out of strike craft over time, and the game will run smoother for you.
Truthfully, you probably won't have many problems, especially given that the 2 ships are often common sites. Like the cradle, UNSC players always had cradles. Now you're just going to have a bit more. And I forgot to mention for the Covenant, what's happening for the Covenant is the good old DRP is getting a bit of a rework to be their supply ship. They are, however, make no mistake, they are remaining the same tanky ship that they always have been, so they won't be less durable. Their weapons are getting a slight tweak, namely, they're going to be somewhat weaker on the whole, and their proton torpedoes. I said proton torpedoes.
Wow.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no.
Plasma torpedoes.
Dishonor.
Plasma torpedoes.
Dishonor.
Plasma torpedoes are going to be locked through research. Same. That also ties into a slight DCS rework, but I'll let you guys see that when that comes about.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is why I guess I should tell you guys I am even though I am the design lead or whatever, however you want to call it, I'm not as much of a Halo lore aficionado as my fellow staff.
He says that, but he reads all the books, so he's
Well-
he's a true lore fanatic. He just doesn't memorize every little tidbit like some of us do.
I don't think it's
No.
possible for him to have not absorbed every single detail through osmosis at this point.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
We've
Oh,
talked about every time a little drop comes out in cannon fodder, like the official cannon size of the UNSC cradle. Which
Oh my god.
Oh my god. We have been pushing for 343 to do that for years. I'm serious. If you
There is
go
a little bit of hype.
a little bit. If you go to Twitter and you type into the search Unikraken and Cradle, you will find posts from like 6 years ago where I'm pestering Frankie to try to get me the official size. Because if you've just read the Fall of Reach book, it sounds like a tiny little kilometer wide plate. But if you've read the comic books or anything like that, like you know that has changed, but it wasn't necessarily set in stone for a very long time. But now we know, and it's what is it? It's 1,800 kilometers. I mean 1,800.
Oh my god.
whoa, meters.
Oh yeah.
Meters by 600. So it's a little thing, but a little bit bigger than it was in the book. Eric Nyland seemed. I love Eric Nyland, and I love his work in the Halo universe. But scale, he didn't really seem to nail down super well, because in his mind, he's a terrestrial dude, and he's thinking about like football field sizes and stuff, and he's like, oh, a kilometer is really big. But in the Fall of Reach, an entire fleet hides behind this ship, because the UNSC Cradle takes the first blow from the Covenant ships at, what was it? Is it Psi Serpentis? No,
I believe no.
Psi Serpentis is
It wasn't reaching Epsilon Iridani.
Sigma Octanus?
Sigma Octanus. There we go. Probably
There we go.
one of those two. But,
This is embarrassing.
but I know, we're terrible. But
We're really bad nerd.
So it's that tiny little plate that takes all that damage. So it makes no sense for it to be a kilometer big. So we knew right off the bat that if anybody ever took a serious look at it, they would change the size. Okay, so let's go on to the schmack. What are we doing to the UNSC's defensive strategy? Lavo.
Well then, remember earlier that we talked about the fighter supply system? How we mentioned that one of your things is the ways to resupply is repair stations and it was anchors. Well, to replenish antimatter. Well, I lied to you, because there will be another way to do it. One of these ways, of course, is going to be the good old schmack. But then, what does the schmack do exactly? And you say, wait, it regenerates fighter supply. That doesn't make any sense. This is a super heavy magnetic accelerator cannon. Well, yeah, it is, but it can do many things. The super heavy Mac is going to basically, it's going to be the S-Mac, and it's going to be better than the S-Mac. I know that I made some GIFs of it. Maybe somebody can post one of those beautiful things in the chat for everyone to see here. So that might be a very good thing to look at. But it fires faster than a default schmack. It's much more durable than both the default schmack and the smack and the repair station. It also does everything a repair station can do. This is being explained by when you're actually building a schmack, you'll also have a repair station nearby. You'll see it there, but the smack will operate just like how a normal smack would. It turns around and shoots things. And lastly, but not finally, it gives the planets that it's built at a small economic buff. Yep, the economic buff. Now that's going to be interesting because you're only going to be able to build a limited amount of them. We haven't ironed out the numbers yet, but in my mind, I'm thinking that you can build one schmack for every 2 planets you own. And then the question is, well, do you want to build this plot a lot of these on your front lines? Well, they'll be the most effective in a defensive manner, or do you want to spread them out amongst your empire because of the economic bonus that it brings?
And there we have it. There's the initial plans. It's undergoing testing. You know, we're working on refining it. We're working on trying to make sure that it's not OP.
Yeah, we haven't entirely put it in the playtester build yet, because we're ironing out, namely things like how many you can build in total at a given time. Basically the one per 2 planets thing that I mentioned earlier. But otherwise, in terms of abilities, how it functions, and all that, that is otherwise complete and working as intended.
As a funny note, the Schmack actually appeared in one of our previous releases as of, I believe, a visual element. It wasn't any different than the SMAC, but it was actually in one of the releases. The actual art asset.
Yeah, we accidentally.
You were able to build them.
That was probably my fault, honestly.
Well,
shame.
We have an entire team of playtesters that really should have pointed it out, but you know.
Many of them thought it was intentional, I think, so I can't blame them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul, Flav, I see you lurking in there. This is on you. Yeah.
Okay, so let's give Mal a chance. Let's talk about you updating the Punic.
Yeah.
Plans, right?
I do have some plans. Nothing exactly concrete yet because I haven't. I've been focusing on some other stuff in the meantime, like the new Artemis, which we will talk about a little later. But my current, I guess, my plans for the new Punic design would be to make it something a little more carrier-like, because the current Punic, while a lot of people do like it, I'd say it looks more like a battleship instead of a carrier, which, given the lore, isn't entirely inaccurate in the role the UNSC used it in. But I think I can do better now in making it look more like a carrier while still looking like a really bulky battleship, like a really heavy capital ship kind of thing. So that is the current plans. Not sure exactly when those will be finished, but I do plan to have the new Punic design in for our next release. So it's going to be a lot of designing by the dev team, like everyone. I make sure to get everyone's opinion on where to go with designs because we're a team. So I don't want to just make something and be like, here it is. I'm going in the build without any outside opinions.
Yeah.
So. So everyone will help out, but go ahead.
Yep. And for anybody that might be confused because they're saying there's already a canon Punic from Halo Fleet Battles.
Oh yes, that's true.
We tend to have strong opinions about ships, and we're not super happy with the implementation of the Punic from Halo Fleet Battles. There are some key design features that we feel are too derivative or a little odd. And so we're going to be, once again, making our own version. We've made, I think, 3 different versions of the Punic at this point. So us having our own kind of fanon Punic is pretty much par for the course at this point. So we're just going to keep going with that. Realistically, long term, maybe 2 years from now, you might see a canon Punic in the mod for some reason or another, maybe as a hero ship or something.
Maybe.
Maybe. But realistically, we have really strong opinions about like the ships that were in the Fall of Reach. It's such a definitive book for Sins of the Prophets, so we take it really seriously, and we're pretty picky about it, for better or worse.
Yeah.
And with Fleet Battles being dead and gone, and everybody being scattered to the wind that worked on it, we don't want to be disrespectful about it. We just have differences of opinion. And so that's all we'll really say about that. So, Mal, you get to keep talking because the next on the list is the new Artemis. The Artemis.
Oh,
yes, please.
So the Artemis, if you're not super aware because you only play Covenant or something like that, it's that ship that sits in the back of the fleet and basically one kills your smaller ships.
I disliked it for that reason.
The Artemis is our key UNSC Fanon ship that we designed ourselves. It's very reminiscent of the railgun from Halo multiplayer, Host 4 and 5. We love it a lot, and with the changes to Sins of the Solar Empire's lighting engines, a lot of our older ships that were designed by Annihilator have not fared well because of the manner in which he did the texturing. It isn't anything at fault from him per se. If you go look at like the renders of the ships that he did in like 3ds Max or something like that, they're beautiful ships. But just the way that the lighting engine was changed, the ships don't pop as well as they used to. And so we're having to make changes and updates. And the Artemis is our latest. So the version 2.0, we've posted renders of the model without a texture, but the model is finished now, and we're going to be showing that off very soon. But Mal, I'll let you talk a little bit about your inspiration and how you went about trying to update the ship.
I'll just make a quick note here.
Yeah.
That because we were talking about roadmaps, this thing, and we're to talk about them as we go along.
Yeah.
One of the big things that's on our list for 0.90 are all these art remodelings, and I mean art changes. So keep talking about them. You're talking about the roadmap.
All right, so our new Artemis. Well, the first thing that our dear Kraken told me when the discussion of remaking the Artemis came up was, if you're going to do it, you need to make it the best thing that you've ever done so far for the UNSC. It needs to wow everyone. It needs to look amazing, and I don't stray too far from its design. And I thought that was pretty fair.
And it
So
needs
the new
Spitfires.
And Spitfires, you're right. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So the new Artemis is very, very, very close to the original design, the original model by Annie. When I was making it, I pretty much modeled it over the old Artemis and then made some changes to it after the fact to, just add some detail here and there, modernize it, and a couple little spots on interchange, but it's still, when you look at it, it's still, you can tell it's the Artemis.
It's more of a detail update than like a
exactly,
rework.
Yeah.
It's very. I tried to keep it very close to the original model in its basic design, and then the texturing, which I just finished up the other day. I even with Annie's textures, I even mirrored some of his textures style, like some of the plating and the extra little armor panels that he put on there. I mirrored that on the new Artemis as well. So it's just a little nod to him, because I really like his design that he did for the old Artemis, and I think everyone else did. I think it was still, even up to right before it got replaced, it was probably the best looking asset of his that was still in the game. It held up pretty well.
It was definitely a labor of love for him. And
it was, yeah. You can tell he spent some time. He spent a lot of time on it.
Yeah, so. And it's my baby too. I spent a lot of time working with him on the design, and so while I didn't model it, the shape of it, I was very involved in. So it's very much my baby and Canada Man 7's baby, and of course Annihilator's baby, and we're happy to share custody between us. And now there's a fourth parent with Malcontent, having made it very beautiful, and I made a hard push for this. So those of you that end up using this functionality from the ship, you better thank me personally. It now has Spitfires on its side. So, the Pillar of Autumn, it has those big anti-ship cannons on the side. Everybody thought they were point defense until Warfleet came out, but we knew ahead of time that wasn't the case. But they're very big anti-ship coil guns. And we've added them to the Artemis. They're shorter range than her front Spinal Max, but if you move the ship manually closer, it can fire. And it will be extra DPS, but of course it will put it in more danger. And so that's kind of the trade-off. You get added DPS if you're willing to, deal with the potential that you could lose it quicker. You want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it happens. Yeah, I'll talk about them for a little bit. Like, I mean, even sometimes when you're in a big fleet battle, sometimes ships will just get close to, the Artemis, just flying by it or whatever. So it's just a little extra close range armament for it, and they look really cool when it's going like full barrage on something. Like them in addition to the archers and its max going off, it was a great addition, and I'm glad we thought of it. I'm glad Uni thought of it specifically.
Well, it was a
And
team effort.
there was some opposition to it at
There
first.
was heated debate about adding.
We had a
I have
whole
no
argument.
idea.
We had days of debate.
Yeah, my fault.
Well, it's your job as
Which then
balance lead.
was fixed by. It was all fixed
It
by
was like a
all coming in one day
50-50.
just saying, "Hey, yeah, it was."
Everybody was kind of jumping back and forth between opinions on whether it's like, ooh, is this a good idea? Does it function well? I mean, I ended up on the side of, yeah, it'll be cool.
Which we're
What?
happy
No, you
And
weren't.
now-
Eventually, I did.
Eventually he did, but at the start he was like, "No, don't change it. It's iconic. It's perfect. It has a very distinct function," and so we had to have a very big debate about how ships function, what their roles are, and about additional functionality. A lot of RTS games these days are moving into where units have multiple functions depending on the scenario, such as Halo Wars 2. Like they have their special ability,
Yes.
and sometimes the special abilities don't necessarily always sync with their primary function, or the fact that like the Wolverine can shoot at tanks with its anti-air guns, even though they're not great. There's always that little tidbit of extra that it can do, and so we had a very healthy debate about that. We take unit balance very seriously, and that's the good news for you guys. If any of you have a problem with the balance, just think about how much worse it could be. You've played other mods, I'm sure, out there. It could be.
Well, you can
worse.
also jump on our on our page, and poke me about it.
Yeah, it's true.
Complain to Lavo.
Like, just come
That's
directly
right.
to me. Like,
We
it's
have-
He
cool.
will
I listen
ignore
to
you, but
people.
you can complain
have-
to him.
We have a Twitter, we have a Facebook page, we have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel that we would love for you to join. We have
Please do.
we have a Steam group. We're all over the place. Anywhere you type in Sins of the Prophet, you're
Reddit?
probably going to find us. We do have a Reddit as well. We're going to start using that more. We've got to rework the style sheet for the page to be a little less ridiculous and gaudy,
Yeah.
but it's in the works.
Talking about
So-
debate, you guys do not want to even know all of the internal discussion that we've had about the Eon. That thing
Ugh,
has been a
Oh,
it's been
constant
shot
nightmare.
at so much.
Poor Eon, man. It just right now it's just in a state of I guess that works.
So it's always been a state of
Like it's
I mean,
right now, it's just no
there
one
are
hates it.
so
No
many
one loves it.
carriers in the UNSC.
Mhm.
Like with stuff coming out for fleet battles, we got information about the ship and the way that it functioned within that game that allowed us to make distinct changes that made sense in Sins of the Solar Empire. Like we pulled the Phoenix out for, I don't know, 2 years or whatever it was, and then we got to put it back in because we got more information about its role and how it functions, and we were able to make a distinct ship because of it. That still felt lore friendly.
Yeah.
So, it's really unfortunate that Fleet Battles isn't around anymore. Hopefully, good old Ken Peters and all the other writers at 343 get to make that technical manual about all of the ships, because we would make great use out of that, and it would help us out a lot. So yeah, there we are for the Artemis.
Ready?
We kind of discussed Forerunners. We don't need to go over that again. So let's just jump into the.
actually, I'm gonna bring something up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked about this before, and now I can confirm that we plan to do it as heroes.
Oh,
That's true.
you're right.
That's a
should
little
talk
further
about
down the list, but yeah, we can jump into the hero system right now before we
Oh,
go into.
what was next on the list then?
Well, no, it actually makes more sense than talking about the faction split yet, because heroes will be in for 0.90. So, and the faction
there's
split's
other-
after
yeah.
1.0. So we
Yeah,
should organize that a little bit better, but this is only episode 2 of our podcast.
Schism needs a hero.
So yeah, let's talk about our hero system. We're working on the code, we're implementing it. So, Lavo, tell us about the hero system.
Sure. I'll let Cole here, who's been quiet most of the time, talk about the heroes themselves. But basically, how the system will work is, of course, different from how most other mods do it, because we have to be our own special snowflakes, in that you don't get to pick your heroes. You don't get to buy them. They just, if you have heroes enabled, because they will be replacing what was formerly known as Quick Start, they will come in at semi-fixed intervals, and then when you get those, you'll be able to know, oh hey, and then you'll get a random-ish hero. I say random-ish because it'll basically every time pick from a certain pool of 4, depending on the route you end up towards. So this way you don't end up with, say, Shadow of Intent, 10, 15, or 15 minutes into the game, which would be rather breaking for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But you will still can get all of the various heroes of whatever faction you're playing as, and every time you won't necessarily get the same ones.
The good news is, for those of you that play 13-hour games against the AI, you're going to get a lot of cool shit over time.
Yeah.
You want the UNSC Everest? Odds are you're going to get it. You want the Spirit of Fire? Yep. You want an Annenberg Clad or the Iroquois? Odds are you're going to get it. You want cool Fanon heroes that we pull up out of our ass? You're going to get those too, whether you like it or not. We want to fill out the hero system and with nice content. And so we are going to be working out, we have our new staff writer, Haruspecs of Hell, or Ratman Joe for those of you out there. And we're going to be working on all kinds of interesting stuff for the hero system.
What's also nice about the hero system, though, is if you don't really want it to be on, there will be a way to turn it off.
Well, I did mention it's going to be replacing the Quick Start system, which is an on-off button. Sorry to be that guy.
No, I mean it's good to reiterate that you can turn it off, because not everybody wants it. But the important thing to note is that the hero system is not going to screw with the balance. The ships individually will be better than their line compatriots, like UNSC Everest, which will have its own unique model with its own unique shape, where we're making changes to it based on advice from Kenneth Peters. But individually, the UNSC Everest will perform better than a normal Valiant class, but it won't perform so much better that it will affect game balance. It's effectively a mild hero.
You can't 1v1 like it has or something.
Actually, may already be working on the Everest stat chassis. I may not confirm or deny.
Oh, that's right.
But
You did do that.
Cole, you're going to get to talk in just a minute about all that wonderful stuff. I promise. I know you're excited.
Oh, very.
I want to assuage any fears that the hero system will break Sins of the Prophets or do something unpleasant to it.
I mean, even if their units will be technically or completely on paper better units, if you have enough smacks, enough firepower to take out a fully upgraded, say, Valiant, with its maximum buffs, you're taking down the Everest. Right. If you can take down a Cass, you'll be able to take down the Shadow of Intent.
Yeah,
pretty much. They're going to have unique abilities. Long term, we would like for them to have unique voices, but we can't guarantee that at this point.
I mean, are they going to be bigger, more powerful, and unbalanced in that sense? Perhaps they'll be a bit unbalanced in that sense, but they are hero units, and they're unique. And also, I didn't mention this earlier, but when you only get them once, when they die, they're gone, and they're not coming back.
Yep. Once you
you can turn them off, as we mentioned.
Yeah, but that's actually something that was really critical to the design. The Halo universe, thematically, is about sacrifice. So you have to decide when you're going to put the Everest in your foremost fleet, pushing into enemy territory, or your shadow of intent or whatever, because when you lose it, it's gone. And that is thematically what the Halo universe is about. All of the shorts and everything, and like Halo Legends and all the stories. I mean, it's changing tone a little bit in the post-war, but Halo is about sacrifice, self-sacrifice for the cause, whatever the cause may be. And so it was very important to us that you get a cool ship. It's better than the average ship, but not breaking the balance, and that when it's gone, it's gone. And so, you can remember, oh, I lost the Everest in the Battle of Butt Shanks or whatever weird stuff you name. planets.
What?
Whoa.
People do name planets weird things. There's
They
nothing
do.
wrong.
Hey, look, at least people are creative.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, not knocking them.
So, Cole, tell us a little bit about what you've been working on with regard to the heroes.
All right. So, humble beginnings, but I've got about 3 to 5 hero stat chassis already in the works. What we have so far is the Everest, the Seeker of Truth, the Pillar of Autumn, and the Pious Inquisitor. Those are going to be the first 4 that probably get rolled out into testing. So from there, we're going to be hammering out just exactly how they're going to be in relation to their buildable counterparts. Is the Everest going to be a level 10 Valiant from the start, or is it going to be a level 5? Is it going to have a Super Shiva or a regular Shiva? Is it going to have a level 8 uplink or level 1? We're going to be working out all that for each individual ship, and that's going to be the big fun part. As we move into what Uni mentioned, the fan and hero ships, I'd imagine we'd like to take some advice from you guys for that, since there are a lot of good minds out there. But anyway, we're just hammering away right now. If you know the Valiant's health, you can compare it to what the Everest is sitting at 10,000. If you want a little base point, that is what it might be its starting health. Can't promise it'll stay that way, though.
We're still testing balancing. We're in very early stages.
Incredibly.
So,
yeah.
Some of this stuff hasn't even hit playtesting. It's very iterative right now.
And
yeah, we're
and
still
for
in.
those of you worried about like early game, what kind of hero ships you're gonna get multiple smaller heroes. Like you're not gonna
Well,
get
no, you also might get capitals. It's more that you won't get things like the Shadow of Intent, the Kaz is the really, really powerful heroes.
Right. I just want to articulate that, like, when they get the in amber clad, they're not going to get just the in amber clad. For the smaller ships, they're going to be coming in like squads. So you might get like in amber clad and the Iroquois and the
Keys
CMA
duo.
Heracles or something like that.
There was a couple of specific battle groups that we were talking about, like small groups like Paris's that might have a little bit better stats than a normal Paris, but they're not about to change the tide of a battle.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we talked about like how the fleet battles does.
Forward on to Dawn also.
That too. Like fleet battles has those special formations that we talked about potentially adding in, like the epochs that come in, like 2 epochs that use sabers instead of long swords or whatever, or like the marathon light carrier refit or whatever like that.
Something else we've been throwing around is like a squadron of Oni Gladiuses. I don't know how you'd say that. Anyway, multiple Gladius corvettes with a little darker paint job, just running around killing stuff in the name of Oni. Would you like that?
Yeah.
I'd like that.
Like that.
Hashtag Oni Gladius, please.
So yeah, I mean, we've got lots of ideas for how to flesh out the hero system to kind of give the game a little bit more flair. We're really limited in like our ability to do storytelling with the game because Sins of a Solar Empire has no campaign and there is no functionality for storytelling. Like it has to be ham-fisted in.
The closest you have is heavily editing tutorials, which has been somewhat done in STI3, but it's not easy to do it.
And the payoff is not really at the right level for the amount of effort.
Unfortunately.
Something I do want to mention is that every hero is going to have a little card on the far right of its ability menu that'll tell you a little bit about the captain and the ship. So for all you lore peoples, you can flip through that.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Hero system is going to be good fluff for the mod.
Mhm.
So, Lavo, do you want to discuss glassing at all?
That actually was the other topic I was thinking of. That's
All right.
not on the list. Now, this is in part, I want to just give a shout out to little thanks to the Star Trek Armada 3 team. As for once, this is a time where they actually were able to help me rather than the other way around, where they actually managed to figure out and get something working that I was not able to manage. Specifically, getting a certain buff type ruin planet to work through buff. Now, this all sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo to everyone out here in the crowd, but in short, what it means is turning parts of a planet to glass and really ruining somebody's days, the Covenant. It's possible. Something we're working on, something we're really throwing ideas around now. You know, what ships will use it, how exactly it'll work. So essentially, you'll be able to go to a planet and glass it, and ta-da, it's now glass.
If you're tired of colonizing and holding on to space, well, you won't have to do that anymore.
Yep, just gather your
we
capital ships
aren't
around
necessarily going to make it uncolonizable. The jury is still on exactly what will be done, what will happen.
The primary focus is asset denial.
Yeah.
Exactly how we implement that is still in balance.
Yeah.
And
But
not every
basically,
ship is going to be able to glass
no,
a planet.
it's going to be limited.
very
Maybe,
limited, you know.
Very few. Like basically, we're thinking of the CAS and or OAS.
Do not expect to waltz an SDV into a Terran planet.
or even a CCS.
Even glassing still has to be balanced.
Yeah.
And then for all we know, we might end up even doing something like being able to partially unglass things if you're the UNSC, but that's very iffy.
That's speculation based on the speculation that's based on speculation. So we'll cross
planets have bad records, guys.
Well, they do.
Hey, why don't we all take a vacation to Meridian? I hear that's a very nice place to go.
Someone get
glass
the belt again.
Today.
Okay.
Well, the thing was too, like if you, sorry, Uni.
No, go ahead.
Something real quick.
No, yeah.
Something real quick. Like if you're the Covenant and you glass a planet, that means you don't get the planet either. So it's a it's a win-lose kind of thing. Like you deny your enemy a planet, but then you don't get it either. So it's like,
But you also get to turn the planet texture into a Christmas tree. So
and it does look very nice. So pros and cons.
Where you use the glassing ability is going to become very strategic, and it's going to be you're going to have to plan ahead. If you're deep in enemy territory and you don't think you're going to be able to push all the way to the capital planet to finish the game, you might want to glass a few things. If you're just pushing into enemy territory, and those are planets that you might need for resources to continue the war against the humans, then you're going to have to not glass them. You're going to have to control that urge and just colonize them instead.
You might do yourself more damage actually glassing a planet.
Yep. You could slow yourself down, and that's always a problem. You could end up in an attrition warfare and then get pushed back by somebody getting the Infinity or something like that. So next on our list, and probably close to our final thing, is the discussion about the post-war and war era faction split. So people ask us all the time, how are you guys going to implement this? How are you guys going to implement that? Are we going to get the Swords of Sing Helios? Are you going to give us insurrectionists? Are you going to do what Sins of a Solar Empire did with loyalists and separatists? And very, very bluntly, we don't see ourselves as a Sins of a Solar Empire mod. We're not just taking what Sins of a Solar Empire did and turning it into a Halo theme. We see the Ironclad engine that Sins of a Solar Empire is based on as our game engine, and we're developing Sins of the Prophets on top of it. And so we don't try to copy what Sins of a Solar Empire does. We just use what functionality they have available for us doing our own game development. I mean, realistically, we're a total conversion mod, but in our hearts, we're a game project. We just have a very tightly locked in game engine to work with. So our plan for post 1.0, after we fix all the bugs from 1.0, so probably post 1.1 or 1.2, is we're going to chop that 1.0 mod down into only things that took place during the Human Covenant War, which we're going to call the War Era mod. The official name is unannounced and mostly undecided at this point. But it's only going to have stuff in it that took place during the war. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean only Bungie era stuff or only things that were in the Halo universe prior to 343 coming along. Like stuff that they've retconned into the war era, we're still going to keep. But like you won't have a UNSC Infinity as the UNSC. And we're going to completely and totally pull out the Titans because Titans do weird things to the AI anyway. Like when the AI has a Titan that it can build, it focuses way too much of its economy and attention into trying to rush to get that Titan. So if you pull that out, you actually get a better performing AI. And so for that war era version of the mod, you're going to see that kind of change. I mean, it's going to be a different kind of thing. And then we're going to, after we chop out pieces and pull that version together, we're going to then move on to what is basically going to be the future projects for Sins of the Prophets team. And that is a post-war version of the mod, where you're going to see changes to, just as an example, the UNSC that make more sense after Halo 3 and during Halo 4 and on. For instance, previously in the mod, we had certain ships that had shields, and then we had to pull that out because it really negatively affected balance with the kind of units that we had for us to be able to use. So, like, we had to pull out the shielded Autumn class. That's going to be coming back in that version of the mod. And we're also going to be adding more factions to the mod. We're not going to be doing insurrectionists. They're not able to project the kind of military power that we feel makes them deserve, to be an official playable faction. But we might update some of their militia units and stuff like that to try to make them better creep monsters. We're gonna be working on a Swords of St. Helios faction, red Covenant ships, red St. Heli ships. Going to be very, very cool. We're also going to be working on a Banished or Brute faction, and these will all include. Yes, we're all very excited about that. We're really excited to see what like an ORS class heavy cruiser looks like with extra armor on it. A la Halo Wars 2 style.
There was like a month-long period where I bugged Mal about, hey, you should concept that like right now.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, it is you loved it.
It's almost like I've been kind of working on that a little bit off and on.
Well, excuse me?
Maybe,
All right, we're talking later.
Maybe in the near future we'll have some concepts to show about where we're heading. But right now we don't really have anything specific to talk about. But the factions will be distinct, unique, and they will have their own things. For instance, the Banished are likely to have some ships that are not St. Heli or Covenant era ships, like wholly new, I guess is the best way to put it.
Very brutish, perhaps.
Maybe like a missile boat.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And well, as we're getting close, I'll just go through because we talk about roadmap, we talk about a lot of things, saying, well, this is where I go. I'm going to tile these in, go back to our initial thing about the roadmap, and say, these are the things that now we're planning for our next release, hopefully 0.90. These are all topics we mentioned: glassing, a lot of models, heroes, the fighter supply system, super heavy Mac. Those are the biggest ones. Hopefully maybe put in some things like improving the UI. The last thing, which I'll talk about after I finish going through these things, is flood stuff. No, we talked a bit about floods. We mentioned that we're hoping to do more unique flood models. Those might not come in at 0.90. Again, small team. Time is always a problem.
Yeah.
We
And
only
then
have a couple of artists.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and then
They've
moving.
got time. Their time is precious.
Yeah.
We are
And then
looking for 3D artists if you're halfway decent. If you look at what we do and you say, I could do something like that, and you're not blowing smoke up your own ass, come contact us if you have free time. We will take
Or
you.
even if you can, or even if you might not be at our super level yet, but you're able to make decent 3D models, give us a holler.
Willingness to learn.
We might be able to say,
I
okay,
promise
hey,
you,
your
I'm
little
fantastic
thing, you just need to
models.
change like X, Y, and Z, or do this little tweak to your UV mapping, and then suddenly your quality, model quality, will shoot up through the roof.
We do
Yeah, if you need
mentoring.
some help.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
like
if you want an
people out,
example, boot up the game right now, plays UNSC, and build a refinery, and look at the glory that is the Spring Hill, and you'll see what Malcontent's first
My
model was.
my best
Absolutely
asset was
barbaric.
Ouch.
The Spring
And-
Hill is
It is a
our
monument
highest
to
detailed asset. Don't hate on it.
Its texture is at least 16K.
One day he's going to update that, and you won't be able to make that joke anymore.
Yeah, well, why
someday,
do
but
you think I
today
keep
is
making
not
the
that
joke?
day, Uni.
Until that day comes. Moving on, at 0.95, which will be the next release so far. What we have there is just basically finishing off the UI, removing any VanillaSense remnants, such as those little notification things that you see when you, like, say for example, build a new ship, then that pops up. Boom, putting in more VOs, more tweaks to the UNS, basically trying to almost finish up the UNSC and Covenant factions. Like, we're already getting fairly close to that.
I would say right now, you guys might, people who've been playing the public builds for the past few years, all of that has been a lead up to 0.90. I don't want to
0.95.
kind of overblow what 0.90 will be, but it may potentially be kind of our largest release in terms of changes.
I don't know.
There is a lot of big
Oh, yeah,
changes coming and a lot of things that have
I
been
guess.
talked about for a very long time. And, not just art, but core balance and refinements to both factions that we're hoping to be not exactly the final iteration of the core balance, but getting close to a solid, finalized, finished UNSC, finished Covenant, so that we can really start branching out to other ideas for the future.
Yeah, I mean, we're also doing like some tweaks to planet balancing, as with some people know and mentioned that with the removal of phase nodes, it's become quite a bit more difficult to defend or deal with planets, fleets hitting them. So we've been trying to do some works with like tactical slots on planets to rectify this. In particular, anything that's like below a temperate, so to speak, in terms of power and population. And also, hopefully in 0.95, the other thing would be included is that Sentinel mini faction that we mentioned much earlier in this podcast. We are very much serious when we mentioned it. Just a lot of it is just paper for numerous reasons. Then, of course, 1.0 is going gold. Finishing up polish, any changes that need to be hot fixed, final balance bits, and boom. And hopefully for the flood, just touching on that real quick, as we've mentioned, as it's mentioned in Solar, it's really the current public version is an early alpha release, and we do know that it's really laggy. So I'm working on trying to fix that by doing some minor flood reworking. But the core concept that fleets are focused around their grave mines, or if we rename it to key mines, or whatever you want to call it, the big tentacle, the big blob with tentacles and spikes.
There we go. One thing that we did manage to gloss over that I wanted to hit up, let Cole talk about really quick, are changes to ship speed that will be in the next release, whatever that release is.
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff you can see in other RTSs like Civ and Halo Wars 2 is that all units move at a little bit of a different pace. Like Jackrabbit, to name a Halo Wars 2 unit that's fast. Then there's like the Condor, which is the slug. Well, you'll notice in current releases that everything moves at a fixed rate. Next release, that'll be changing. To name like a normal moving ship, a Marathon, a fast moving ship would be a Paris. So that's something we're really looking forward to getting in because it's going to change fleet composition a bit and open up some role changes and fluctuations. So the Halberd and Paris overlap that a lot of people have seen and noticed, that should be lessening a bit because the Paris would be fast, for example, and the Halberd would be slow.
So, for instance, if you take a massive hit and you need to get things out quick, out somewhere where an enemy fleet is rolling around messing with your stuff, you're not going to want to build slow ships. You're going to want to build only fast ships. And
Exactly.
So these kind of changes are going to affect that kind of dynamic and that kind of meta when you need to respond fast and you don't have things on hand.
You want to rush in, charge somebody, and get behind their lines fast? You want fast ships.
Or do you want to chase down the enemy flagship that's sitting at 500 health? Well, just send your Parises ahead of your fleet and it can run it down. That's something we really wanted to add because it'll add a new flexibility. It's something a lot of other strategies games have, and it's something we really, really want.
Players
And need.
Yes, I agree. Players who want to become good at SOTP in the future need to be able to learn how to micro control their fleets to some degree. Not like a massive degree, but being able to quickly get all of your Parises under your command without the rest of the fleet and telling them to jump ahead.
Well, no, that's not really true. The UNSC has always been super heavy micro.
Well, yes, but it's going to become more pronounced.
I think to sum up kind of one of the things that we're doing here with 0.90, and you guys might be able to tell kind of with all the topics that we've talked about here, is we're trying to add more depth to the gameplay for both factions, but also just for the game in general. You know, the fighter supply system, what we're doing with ship speeds, the changes that we're doing to the Flood, with, you know, the potential with glassing, the hero system, all of these things are going to add more depth, more thought to the gameplay, and we're hoping that it's going to add a very interesting dynamic, you know, to the game that gives players more to think about while they're playing, rather than just kind of mindlessly building fleets and sending them in, watching them die, building another fleet, watching them die. You know, give players something a little bit more deep to learn, that there's more depth to the gameplay, and maybe even a higher skill gap, you could say.
Okay, so this has been a very long podcast, way longer than we originally intended. But we've covered a lot of topics. And so we're going to go ahead and close the podcast at this point. And after we do our closeout, individuals in the stream, feel free to ask questions and we will answer them.
Some of us will also, or at least I know I will, be sticking around in our Discord server for a bit.
I will
so in the
As
general,
will I.
so if you guys want to come around and say, hey, well, here's some other questions, or hey, how about this? You know, we'll be there and we'll be listening.
Yes, we highly encourage you to interact with us in whatever social media platform you frequent that we also do. And if we don't frequent somewhere that you think we should, let us know. We're always happy to reach out to try to get better communication with the fan base. So that's it for the show. Thank you for sticking around. We'd love to hear your feedback about the podcast. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Steam, Discord, just about any other place. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you guys.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.